This topic is very sensitive, and in fact, I believe that journalism and the fact-checking go hand in hand in order to achieve credibility. In the world of media, any collection of news or fact require a collection of tips and platforms and other resources to better practice for fact-checking and investigation in journalism. This what our respected guest will elaborate more and explain the tools and techniques to achieve it. I will not go into more details, and I would like to introduce our esteemed speaker for today's session. Her CV actually is rich of experience, and I will try to summarize it. Ms. Sarah Hassan graduated from Columbia University in South Carolina in May 2004 from the Department of Art in Political Science. She also received her master's degree from Columbia University in New York City in 2005 from the School of Journalism, concentrating in broadcasting. She currently works for TRT World as a producer since November 2017. During this period, and specifically from November 2018 until June 2019, she worked in a Jazeera Media Network in Washington, D.C. She worked as an editor-in-chief in Lale magazine. Before that, she worked as a writer, photographer, and a field producer in Al Jazeera Media Network in Washington, D.C. from November 2006 until June 2017. Let us welcome our guest, Ms. Sarah, and on behalf of ICYF President Mr. Taha Ayhan and ICYF Secretariat, we would like to thank you for accepting our invitation to join us and share your experience with our participants and audience. Now, I will give the floor to proceed with your presentation. Ms. Sarah, the floor and time are yours.
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Mr. Hair. I really appreciate your introduction. And I would like to extend a big thank you to the ICYF, to Islamic Cooperation of Youth Forum, for hosting this event. I think it's very important, as you mentioned, to give young people the tools they need to be good journalists. And it's good to see so many people who are interested in journalism. I'd also like to thank Ms. Hilal and Ms. Merva for their help in coordinating this. So, Assalamu alaikum. I want to welcome you to this session on tools and techniques of fact-checking in a post-truth world. As Mr. Hare mentioned, it's very, very important to make sure that your facts are correct. And she mentioned the many different mediums that I've worked in newspapers, magazines, TV, internet, web, digital. It doesn't matter what your medium is. These are all just, as the word suggests, they're just mediums to portray the news, the information that you're trying to convey to your audience. So what is like the most important thing to, what is the most important role of a journalist? It's to find the truth and present it to the audience. And the number one most important way to have your audience, see you as credible, see your facts and information as credible, is to be honest with the audience. So, today, many times now, the rush is to be the first to get the news out. And breaking news, it's like a race to see who gets the news out first, which is not a bad thing in and of itself, because you do want to be part of that news cycle and be able to get the information out to the people as quickly as possible. But that should not come at the expense of accuracy and making sure that your facts are correct, your visuals are correct, especially like the more layers you add to your story. Like, say if you're writing, then you have just facts, text, information. You have photos that you add. Photos are very, very, very important. They might just be on the side of your article, but they have, they also have to be accurate. They have to match what you're saying. They have to not be misleading. So your visuals are just as important as your text, and it's important to verify all of that. And I'm going to today show you a few tools and tricks on how to use the materials that you have, to use the resources that you have available to you. see. So also, I just want to mention one more thing that's really important about being factually correct is that, you know, in today's world, there's, you know, so much conflict out there. You're providing a service to the people around the world. So what you say has an impact on people's lives and ongoing disputes. So if you don't get your facts and your information correct, you could potentially worsen a conflict that's already out there. You know, for example, as we saw with the Arab Spring a few years ago, you know, it was very crucial to get correct information out. And another thing is that, like, social media, it can either hurt you or it can help you. There's so much information out there with, like, you know, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you name it. And you all know all the platforms that are out there. So you can either get lost in the shuffle. There's so much information that you can, you know, choose the wrong sources, put out the wrong information, or you can use it to your own advantage and use, you know, the resources that are out there, the people who are out there, because at the end of the day, it's the people who are behind these stories on these social media platforms. It's your job as a journalist just to verify what people are saying. Are they telling the truth? Are they, you know, creating false information that then ends up in the news cycle? So the absolute best way to gather factual information is to be there yourself, which is not always feasible. And I'll come back to that part later. But, you know, the most important way is to be there, to witness something yourself, to speak to people yourself. And it's just the best way to verify information. And in today's world, even, and especially now, like, as you know, with coronavirus, COVID-19, we're all under lockdown pretty much. And most of the things that we do are online. So this can come to your advantage where maybe, you know, before you would have to go to a certain location, now you can connect with people online. So you need to use those tools to your advantage. Sometimes the best way to do it is just traditionally pick up a phone and make a phone call, email somebody, and try to connect with the people who are out there, so that you can verify information directly with the people who are there. And more importantly, you can find if there are flaws or there are things that don't add up with the people who are posting things. Then you can follow up and see, you know, maybe there's actually misinformation and you're able to figure out something that's not true that's out there that you can then verify and put the truth out. Usually when you're in a newsroom setting, newsrooms will have access to news wires, and, you know, that includes like the AP wires, Reuters, AFP, a number of others. And, you know, some, you know, have text, some have videos, some have photos, some have, you know, all of them, and some are very specific. For example, AP images. I'm going to do a quick screen share. Let me see. Okay, so not this one. Okay, so for example, you have AP images here. And this is a database with only photos, but the way you use these, the way you do your search is really important. So, I mean, this is just one example, but you might have access to another database, or you might have access just to other photos that are not even part of a database. But the best way to do it is to use all the search tools that are available. It's really important to know what resources are available. So let's say we're looking for Trump. Okay, so we type in Donald Trump and all these images come up of Donald Trump. Now, if you see right here in the corner, there's search tools. And a lot of people don't use these search tools. They just go in, find the first photo they can find, maybe something that's really, you know, grabs people's attention, which is not bad in and of itself, because you do want your viewers to be engaged. You do want to get, you know, people involved, but you want to make sure that your photos are accurate and that your footage is accurate. So if you go to search tools here, you have date, time. You can do a custom range. You can put in a specific date. For example, if you want to do the right after his inauguration, so you do, you have to go back. So let's say inauguration. You put in January 2016, And then actually that's 2017. And I don't know why it's not showing it. Okay, and then you do January 2017 again. So once you've applied it, now you're sure that you have the correct time. You can also go in and find a correct place, advanced search, and you look for a country. So you look for the United States, for example. So the point of this, of showing you this, is that whatever database you have, whatever information you have, it's really important to learn the basics and the nuances of how to use that tool to your best advantage so that you can narrow down your searches to find exactly what you're looking for. For example, one time, we were doing a video and there was, a picture of Tehran that one of the editors wanted to use, but, he was saying that it was very general. But I was, what we were trying to explain is that it has to be, somebody in Tehran is going to know that this is Tehran. So you have to be very accurate with your locations, places, because somebody out there is going to know that your photo is either fake, it's not, it doesn't fit what you're trying to explain. It might even seem misleading to the point that you're trying to make. Reuters here also has different, like it has videos, it has photos. These are different tools that you can use to help. What else was I gonna say? Give me a second. Photos, as I was saying, very, very important. It's important to verify photos. And sometimes we have tools that are at our disposal that we don't even know. We have like more tools than we can, that initially meets the eye. So let me share another, let me share this. If you look at this picture right here, for example, this, what's the first impulse of where this could be, this location? Just think to yourself, where could this be? Many people would say some city in China, right? But let me show you, I'm gonna zoom in on this section right here. And if you look at it, you can see this number right here. It's a New York City phone number. So now you know this photo is not actually from China, it's from New York City's Chinatown. So it's very important to use the tools that you have available. Just look, like this is just one simple photo. And you could have, like in this case, it may or may not make a big difference to your story. In another case, it might actually, you can see this picture, right? Just making sure, of Chinatown. To here.
Yes, we can see.
Okay. So, yeah, so in this case it may or may not really affect your story, but in other cases it could make a big difference. I'll show you one place where it would make a difference. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina. They have many different layers to their government. They have several presidents, several members of their presidency, and they have several regions within their country. So if you look here, this is Bosnia. Now there's two different locations I'm going to highlight. One is, this is Serbia, the Republic of Serbia, okay? But these places in red, this is Republika Srpska. So on the one hand, if you think that, that Republika Srpska is just a translation of the Republic of Serbia, then you could cause, this could be a problem because they're completely two different locations. So it's important to verify, the information that you have. Like in this case, you could be like, this would be a very contentious issue between the two sides, given their past. I'm gonna show you one more thing here. For example, let's say you have a photo that you cannot verify. You don't know where it's from, you don't know what it's for, but you really wanna use it. This is the picture, like let's say of this fighter jet, but you can't find the source, and you can't use it unless you verified the source. So I'm going to show you a trick right now of how to verify photos online, reverse verify photos. So let me show you here. Is this one? Okay. So here, you go to Google, click on this corner right here that says images, and then you'll see this pop up right here. And you have this little icon of a camera. If you click on it, it gives you two options. It gives you you can either paste the URL if you have a web page of a photo that you're trying to verify, or you can upload an image. So if you choose a file here, and then you upload the file of that image that you had, then it brings up this whole page of, this one shows that the possible related search, this one shows the closest possible search that you could be looking for. You also have a whole bunch of other similar images that you can, look into, choose from, find the information that you're looking for. Maybe, this would be a way to find the exact photo that you're looking for. Let's see, another search tool that people use is, for example, Wikipedia. This can be good or it can be bad, because Wikipedia, it's open to the public. Anyone can go in and update Wikipedia and put their own information in, which may or may not be true. But the way you could use something like this to your advantage is that, as you see throughout every article in Wikipedia, for example, we're looking at former Sudanese president Omar al-Bashir, and you have these notations. So maybe you might not be able to use information directly off Wikipedia, but you can go to one of these notations. And these notations, you can click on them and it'll take you all the way to the bottom, and it shows you exactly where the information you got in the page. So one, like for example, this is a BBC, Al Jazeera. I saw somewhere there was an ICC directly, it has information. So this way you can kind of verify the information that's out there by choosing the sources that are actually more credible, that you could use instead of just using what's on the regular page. So another thing that you can do with, for example, Twitter, as I mentioned, it has a whole lot of information out there, and you can't always verify what's true. For example, let me see, there was this, which now there are tools online on these social media platforms that they are kind of self-checking themselves. So as you can see, this was a video, which we can't look at anymore because it says reviewed by independent fact checkers, which, the information was incorrect. But at the time when it came up, it was a video of a man who was being, detained by police. And then the police looked at his ID and let him go. And what the conversation was that people found out that he was an FBI agent, that he was an undercover FBI agent. And that was not true. So what you can do, the way you can verify these things is that you immediately look around what you have. If you look just right below that post, there was another post where his friends are saying he's not an FBI agent. They thought he was someone with a warrant out for an arrest. They saw his ID, they realized he wasn't the right person, and they let him go. So if you were to say that he's an undercover FBI agent, that's incorrect information, and that's misleading, and you don't want to do that. So it always helps to read around what you're looking at and what you're looking for. Another thing that I did was I actually clicked on the person who posted this, and then you can contact people. That's another good thing about social media, is that not only is there a lot of information, you can contact the people who are putting it out there. This way, I contacted his friends who had mentioned this, and then I checked with them to see what they were saying. And then, that leads to another person, that leads to another person. So if you use your resources, you can go around a story and use your different sources that are out there to compare information. If it doesn't add up, then it may not be true. You can, look, try to find the people you can talk to, because as I said, you can't always be there in the field. So this is one way to use social media in your favor. to sort through, sift through all that information that is out there, and be able to connect directly with the people who are putting this information out there, and to verify if it's true or not true. Let's see what else. So, okay, another thing I would suggest is that if you're interested in a specific topic, a specific story that you want to cover, I would say to invest your time in it and do as much research as possible. That includes, online encyclopedias. Go as far back into the history of each story that you're interested in. That way, when it comes down to the time to do the story, you have this plethora of information that you can go back into, that you can use for your stories that you may not have time when you're in the crunch of a story. So if you have a background in that topic, it's really helpful to be able to pull into that information. And not only that, it helps give context, especially in the case of like conflict zones, things that cause contention in the news. It's very important to have all the angles. It's very important to be able to get that information. And if you have background in that information, it's really good to have that. And I would stress to read a lot, read books. Don't shy away from books. I know a lot of people, nonfiction books, I mean, when you're doing stories on certain topics, don't shy away from reading. I know like the impulse is just to get whatever you can, quick sound bites of information, but that's all they are, is that snippets of information. You want to have the more you research, the more you will have context to your story. And not only that, you will be able to pinpoint information that's not correct, maybe that's out there, and you would be the one to add that context that maybe other people are not being able to do. Like if you're covering elections anywhere, knowing the major cities, knowing the major political parties, knowing the figures, knowing the history of the figures. For example, like say you're covering President Trump in the US, like a lot of people leave out the fact that he used to be a liberal, he used to be a Democrat. Now that, what made that shift? Now he's a Republican, now he's speaking for Republican administrations. But most people don't put that context in, and that context is really important in understanding changes and shifts in history and politics, and and what contributes to conflicts and political scenarios. Another good way to make sure that you have factual information is just going directly to a person, finding experts. And maybe not necessarily just experts that are already out there. That could be like your starting point. That could be your basis for, from where you branch out. Like for example, if you see an expert on a news show or whatever, but that way you can find people who are knowledgeable. Like don't be tempted just to go with who's out there. Dig deeper. Try to find people who you can talk to, and then get on the phone with them. Get on an email. Get on the speak with them, and try to verify like what information they have, what can they add to your story, what is their expertise. And that's very important. When you quote people directly, then that eliminates speculation, that can eliminate editorializing and guesswork. And then that doesn't mean give the people a platform, because people, well, most of the time they'll have an agenda, so don't give them a platform. But it's a way to put the words in their mouth instead of yours, and it can add to the context of your story. So it's very important to try to reach out and speak to people as much as you can, experts, people in the field, people in whatever you are trying to cover. Having other people say, explain things, that's also very helpful to your context, to your story. And if it's somebody who it doesn't necessarily, like, there's two different types of experts. One is a person who will give an overall scenario of what you're talking about, who will explain a situation, a conflict, or whatever you're trying to talk about. Another one is where you can still get people who have opinions to show your story, but make sure that you give every side of your the story, the point you're trying to make, give them equal or like proportional weight, so that like it doesn't matter that you have somebody who has an opinion, make sure that you have someone who has the other opinion as well. That way you can have a conversation going with what information's out there. I don't know if I reached my time limit. I can open the floor to questions if we're ready for questions.
Have you finished, Ms. Sarah?
Yes, we can move to questions.
Okay, our participants, we will open the floor for question and answer. So anyone has a question can raise his hand as usual. For the time being, Ms. Sarah, if you could, you wanted to interact with the participants, if you want to start with them until we get the questions.
Okay, so what are some of the platforms that you use when you're gathering information?
I guess, Ms. Sarah, you need to repeat the question because your
Sorry.
connection was, it's okay.
Okay, so what are some of the platforms that you use, the social media platforms that you usually tend to gravitate towards when you're looking for a story or when you're trying to cover a story? What are some of your favorite platforms?
So we are expecting our participants to answer. So if anyone would like to start to answer the question, I guess they say Twitter.
Yeah, where's my chat? Are we still on the screen share? How do I stop?
So we have Noor Tihani Abi Malik. The floor is yours. You can go ahead, Miss Noor.
So, thank you very much, Miss Moderator. I'm sorry, Miss Sarah, because I cannot open my camera right now. I'm sorry if it's a little bit not polite. And to answer your question just now, usually I'll use Google, of course. It's my main source. Like anything, even the shower thoughts or serious things. But also for some serious issue, I would love to go on. I mean, like if I know someone, I will go directly asking them. For example, for me, is the issue like Kashmiri, the things that's going on in Kashmir. Before this, I have I know there's something going on in Kashmir, but I couldn't like gather enough thoughts on it. Like, and sometimes just if you go on internet, this thing like there's way too much to read, and then sometimes we just like where to start, we don't know. So like I would like to ask you like if we have the chance to meet someone, I mean like that is a very good opportunity. And how do we actually how do we actually approach them? Yeah. I'm like sometimes you meet people that you are close enough that you can ask so many questions. Alhamdulillah, I got these people as well. But then sometimes they're coming from this side of the world that you would like to know more, but then you are not too close to them. So like how do we approach people like properly? So I think that's my question. Thank you very much for your inputs, by the way.
Yeah, of course. No, that's a very good question. So a lot of times when you put on that journalist cap, people, that already creates kind of a bond, like as opposed to, if just some random person comes up and asks a question, as opposed to if you're saying like, I'm interested in this story, I'm interested in telling your story, that helps people open up. And that helps people, see that you're interested in their plight, in their story, in their situation. So if like I said, if you can find them on social media, like send them a message on Twitter or Facebook, or find an email. Sometimes that helps to organize your thoughts and explain to them that this is what I want to tell about you, and you can help me tell that story. So, and then if you can, once you make that initial contact, then don't be shy to be like, oh, what's the best way to contact you? Then a lot of times they'll give you their phone number, you can WhatsApp them, then that way you can keep following up with information. And that helps to get the conversation going. I don't know if that helps answer the question a bit of how to break that break the ice.
Yes, you did answer the question. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, Ms. Sarah, I can see from the
A lot of chat. Yeah, okay. Also a lot of Twitter. I see a lot of Twitter.
Zarmeena Imtiaz from Pakistan said that usually we go to Twitter.
Sorry, you broke up a little bit.
Could you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
She said usually we go to Twitter and cross-check it with the news website.
Okay.
And Anum Hanafi from Pakistan say Twitter, Facebook, and I see who has shared the information. I usually contact with the local correspondent to check.
That's really good. Yes, because you can always pool in with other journalists who are out in the field. And oftentimes journalists will, they'll be happy to work with you, even if you don't know them, if you tell them that you're working on a similar story, people will share resources. And yes, reaching out to local journalists, especially local journalists, is important because, when you have international global journalists who cover stories that are wider, a lot of times they'll fly in and fly out. But people who are local, they will actually, be living in that situation, be living that story maybe themselves. So it's good. That's a really good point, is to, collaborate with other people who might have done the story before. Or currently. Okay.
We have another question from Ahmed Abidi from Ethiopia. Ahmed, the floor is yours.
Okay, can you hear me, please?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah, for your presentation. I want to talk a little bit about Facebook. Here in eastern Somalia, eastern parts of Ethiopia, there are significant portion, and out of 100, only 15% of the population can read and write. So Facebook has become the main source of misinformation. Every single day, people are posting fake news, spreading across the society. Even yesterday, we had a famous Somali, Komi, who was, he's actually a singer, who was announced dead in England. And eventually, after 3 hours, it turned out to be false information. So we understand that there is a great misinformation circulating around society, because there are only few people, a very small portion of society can, read and write and know what's right, what's wrong. So is there any, way where we can spot on misinformation on Facebook, or any tips that we can follow to make sure that what's right, what's false, and what's true? Thanks. That's my question.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's a very good point. So I know some of these social media platforms are actually doing their own kind of fact checking, which, can be good, can also, it could also be infringement on, people's expression, because what if they block something that was true, so you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt. But as you mentioned, there's pretty much people have access to social media now, and anyone can post anything without whether it's true or not. So, again, the best way is to try to, contact the person who is. Yes. Sorry. Go ahead. Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
I think Suhair internet so bad. I can go, yeah.
I rejoined.
Oh, I got disconnected. Okay. I'll just continue, and then I'm sure she'll be able to rejoin soon. Yeah. So like you said, the misinformation is out there. If you again, trying to reach out to the people, sometimes when you're not able to reach out to someone, it's because they know that they're not putting the correct information out there. So it's really hard, especially when you don't have the opportunity to speak to people directly. Are you you said you're living in that area where all the misinformation is being put out. if you're able to, like get in touch with organizations that deal with the issues that are there, like, sometimes they are able to access points that we maybe may not be able to, that we only get through social media. For example, like humanitarian organizations or, like nonprofit organizations that deal with the topics that are being discussed, they will oftentimes have people on the ground who will be able to find more of the facts that are out there that maybe each of us may not be able to access unless we're there on the ground ourselves. So a lot of times, being able to verify that information, going back online and searching for that information yourself, like going through organizations like, say, Human Rights Watch, or groups that are on the ground who would be able to verify what that information is or not. When you're covering a story, one good way of covering yourself, covering your back in these situations is to say that something is a developing story that gives you more time to verify facts, or for example, just be honest with your viewer or your reader and say that this is not our specific information. We didn't get this information. We're taking this from a social media platform. That way, if you've covered your back, so you haven't said that this is fact. You're just saying that this is what we've been able to gather, what we've been able to see. For example, like with the war in Syria, especially when it first broke out, there was no access, and like journalists pretty much had no access unless you were already there and you were a local. So there were a lot of videos that came out that were not true. I think there was one media outlet that had run a video of a man who basically, there was an explosion and he fell over and he was presumed dead. And then he thought the camera had stopped rolling and then he got back up. And so, it was like there was a lot of that going on. And so when you say that, okay, this is where we got this information, then that helps to cover you a bit, and gives you also more of an opportunity to dig deeper. I hope that answered the question.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Sarah. So we have Zarmeena Imtiaz from Pakistan.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm so sorry I cannot open my camera because bandwidth is not very good. So I would like to ask, that especially in the current scenario, in the corona days, there's a lot of misinformation. But if you intend to find out the factual information about the current situation, what are the sources you would refer to?
You mean about the pandemic itself?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so again, you can go to the organizations, like, for example, the medical organizations that are out there, but sometimes those organizations, even they're also trying to sort through, and, at one point they're saying the mask is ineffective, another point they're saying it is effective. So maybe then being creative and going through like hospitals that are dealing with like the coronavirus pandemic, with patients directly, with, people who have potential, like who have died. So, maybe going through official sources may not always be the best way, but if you go like kind of in the middle, like, you're not going straight to the people on the ground, maybe you can't access them, and you may or may not be able to trust what expert information is out there, which oftentimes it's true, sometimes they are still learning what's going on, and sometimes it's just may or may not be true. If you go through that middle ground, for example, people who are working, like humanitarian aid workers who are on the ground, say in refugee camps where this could be spreading, or in the hospitals, the nurses, doctors, medical professionals, even going to like universities that have medical experts. Those are the people who are studying these situations, trying to find people who deal directly with the topic that you're covering, for example, in this case, coronavirus, going through them and hearing what their perspectives are and what their advice and what their information, what they're seeing, because they're also seeing things that are happening on the ground, whether or not they're affected in their perspective. So then they can give you some insight. Is that helpful?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, Ms. Sarah, do you have any significant experience that you came across on daily basis while doing your job? to share it with the participants?
Yes. So the one of them that I had mentioned was during the Syrian war, during the Arab Spring, you know, where like we just had no access to information. None of the journalists did. So in that case, you know, quantifying the information, you know, it's important to say like, this is like, you know, just again, be honest with your viewers. Your viewers and your readers will appreciate your honesty. They know that sometimes, you know, we don't have access to everything. You know, we can't always be everywhere. So if you tell them that, look, we have limited access as well, this is what we can tell you for sure, and this is what we're hearing from this place and that place. That way, you know, they see that you're trying and that you're also, you know, like I said before, like you're covering yourself so that, you know, if by any chance something wasn't true, you didn't say it as fact. You're saying that this is the information that's coming out. And you know, another time was when I was like during the Arab Spring in Bahrain. I had actually been there, but that was like I was there myself, and so I was able to witness the first casualty, the first person who was shot, and you know, I was able to see, you know, the type of bullets that it was like those sprayed bullets that basically goes over your entire back. So like being a witness to that, you know, that way I was able to verify the information for myself. And like I said, the more you can verify for yourself, the better. But you know, you don't always have that access to the information. So then you can, then, you know, like after I left, then I stayed in touch with the people who I had met while I was there. And then they were able to give information. Same thing with Iraq. I was there a couple years ago. And once you're in a place, or once you know a person who's in a place, it's very important to make those contacts. So, and especially when you know somebody you can trust. And it's good to make as many contacts as possible. That way, you know, you can verify, you know, like, does everybody's story match up? And if it doesn't match up, you know, it's not always that people are trying to mislead you. Maybe, you know, they also heard something that was different from somewhere else. Then you ask those questions. That's the most important part of being a journalist, is asking as many questions as you can. Things that don't add up, always ask. Don't assume that, oh, maybe you don't understand, because if you don't understand the topic, if you don't understand what's happening, then it's very likely that your viewer or reader is not going to understand. So it's your job to ask those questions for your audience. So making those contacts, getting in touch with people who you can trust, and then they can kind of be your eyes and ears on the ground as well. So yeah.
Okay, we have another question from Abdul Rasak Ilduo, and sorry if I mispronounce your name, from Nigeria. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the presentation. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. As a freelance journalist, so we observe, this is my question, you observe that there is political mismanagement of fund in a country, and you've gone to make your findings, you have facts with you, but we are so afraid of disclosing this information, because you know that these leaders, they have all it takes, that the moment you release the information, so your life is at stake, and you're not working with an organization, but as a freelance journalist. How do you go about this? Did you get the information?
Yes. You know, that's an excellent point. There's a lot of places in the world that, you know, are conflict zones, or, you know, you yourself could be putting your own life in danger by putting information out there. A couple ways around that is, this doesn't normally happen, but sometimes you can use like a professional name that's maybe not your own, or not put your name on it. Sometimes, like, you know, I'll do a story that's very, you know, if it's controversial or whatever, then you're doing the story, you're putting the information out there, but you're not putting yourself out there, you know. And what was I going to say? Yeah, like also sources. You can tell your sources. That's the thing about journalists, though. You have to kind of be willing to take that risk, you know, to be able to, you know, sometimes like journalists get jailed, they get killed, and I'm not saying, you know, obviously try to avoid that, but you know, just that's the part of being like a courageous journalist, is trying to get that information out there. And you can tell your sources that, listen, I can say that you're an anonymous source. I can, you know, list you as just, you know, as a different name sometimes, like, you know, if you're dealing with, like, say, rape victims or, you know, torture victims from prisons or whatever, sometimes you can tell them, listen, I'll give you another name so that it's not your specific identity. Or you can silhouette people, like if you're doing video, you can make sure that the light source is behind them in the camera so that you can't see their face or their features. And so that's a way to protect the people who you're covering. And, you know, like I said, to protect yourself, you can just leave your name out of it, leave your, you know, face out of the story itself. I hope that helps.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay, Ms. Sarah, I came across a question that came to my mind. What if the journalist forced to mislead when he report or write a report, but he is forced to mislead the facts? How can he overcome this issue?
That's a very good point, because you know, a lot of times, you know, when you work for maybe established networks, maybe they have, you know, they may have their own agenda, they may have, like, they may have their own hands tied. And in that case, you know, you basically, it's up to you to decide, do you stand up to that? You know, a lot of times you have to argue with your superiors, because at the end of the day, when everyone's a journalist, like, you know, normal 9-to-5 jobs, you have a hierarchy, and yes, you have, you know, the same hierarchy in a news network, but everybody is a journalist and everybody is kind of on an equal footing, and you have to stand up for that. You know, I've had to do that in the past, and sometimes you have to, you know, sometimes your job, it could be at stake, but you have to look at yourself, like, will you be able to live with yourself not having stood up for it? Sometimes, you know, just putting up that fight, maybe they didn't even look at that angle, and, you know, they might be able to see your point, or at least you'll be able to add to the story that a nuance that wasn't going to be there before. But yeah, I mean, it's difficult sometimes. You know, you may not agree with what's happening, and it's your job to bring that up. It's your job to put that out there. And sometimes, like, if it's big enough, it depends on your personal situation. If it's a big enough problem, you know, sometimes you'd have to, like, some of my professors at when I was at the journalism school, they said that, you know, if it goes completely against your principles, then you might have to part ways, you know. But sometimes, the point is to put that information out there, put up that fight, and, you know, sometimes you'll win, sometimes you may not. But it's up to you as an individual to make sure that you're doing your best and putting the facts and objectivity out there.
Okay, we have a question from Isnaya Salim from Philippines. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. So one of the things I observe is that once a wrong information is out there, especially in prime, for example, people believe it. It's so hard to counter it with the truth. Like, if you knew that, if you verify that this information is wrong, it's harder to convince people that what they actually saw first is wrong and what you are telling them now is truth. So what can you say? How are we able to counter wrong information, for example, fake news, and how convince people and tell them that this is actually wrong? Thank you.
So, you know, our jobs as journalists is not necessarily always to convince people to, you know, to believe something or to agree with something or not. As long as you're putting the facts out there, all the facts that you can find out there, and backing your sources, backing your facts with statistics. You might have to do your own research, you know, to put, you know, show graphs, to show numbers, to show information that backs what you're saying. Then you just put the correct information out there, and then, you know, it's up to the people to, you know, hopefully they'll be smart enough to be able to figure out which one actually makes sense, which one has you know, backing, which one doesn't. Like, usually, like I said, it's not really our job to convince people. It's our job to portray the information. It's our job to be sure that we have the correct information, that we have the facts, the correct numbers, the correct you know, what the context that's out there. And then, you know, like, we're not going to always, you know, be loved as journalists. You know, sometimes it's said that, you know, especially when all the governments or when everyone hates you, then that means you're doing your job right. You know, it's not to be liked by people or to be, you know, agreed with. But once you've put that information out there, then eventually, you know, people will either accept the truth or not. You know, that's not your job to convince them. It's just your job to give them the information.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Sarah. We have a question from Mahruka Rajaz from Pakistan. The floor is yours.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Assalamualaikum. My question is along the same lines that was asked just before me, but I want to ask that sometimes there is some news going on social media that you find out, like recently I saw a picture of two children who were missing, and they were later found, but that pictures keep on circulating on social media, and there is no stop to that, and it's already been maybe a week or two, they are already found. So is there any like social media feature that we can maybe on Facebook, that we can tell Facebook that this is a solved case now, or maybe this information is wrong, and now you have to stop it? Like, I can report a single picture, but will it help in spreading that picture anymore, all from the Facebook, or just that specific post that I have reported? Is like, my question is, can we do that? Is there some feature like this on Facebook or other social media outlets? I hope my question is clear.
Yeah. So well, I know like Facebook does have the report feature like that you mentioned. If it's possible to, you know, to reach out to, you know, I'd actually have to check to see if there's other ways to flag information that's online. I think they're starting now, like, you know, with Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, they're starting to flag stories themselves that are not true. But another way is to maybe to flag, to reach out to those, to local other media outlets that might be able to counter that information. If you know that the people, like those two children have been found, if there's a way to get in touch with like the family of those kids, then you can put out a story showing like, okay, here, these kids are here, they're not missing, here's a picture of them, you know. And if you are able to counter misinformation with information, sometimes that helps. But yeah, like, you know, or I'd have to check to see if Facebook like has more than just the report feature, because that will already like automatically flag information that's out there. But like, you know, like I said, if you can like then show like these kids are here, that could help, you know, people to see that, okay, wait, you know, you can't deny that these children are here. Does that help?
Yes, it helps. Thank you so much.
Okay, Ms. Sarah, we have Karim Kabari from Egypt. The floor is yours.
Hello, Ms. Sarah.
Hello.
Usually, people are getting so emotional, and when we are talking about the tools that we use to prove the information and know how to use it, we are talking in more professional level and more well-educated class of people. But talk about the majority, they are taking just getting so emotional once they read a post or a hashtag or something, and they even act before processing the information and trying to know whether it's true or not. And that probably will be too late. As you know, a lot of information have been leaked and people got actions, and after that it was wrong, and it's a little bit difficult to recover this, not the information, but to recover the action itself, or to recover the response that people did. So what are the steps or the procedures that should be done for the normal people so they cannot overreact, or they don't get the action before processing the information and before knowing it in a very simple way? And if you see a lot of information being leaked, and people got the action to believe it, and it will be difficult to undo this belief of people regarding to this information.
Yes, I see your point. That is a problem, you know, when people's emotions run high. This is something that's just, you know, at a societal level that, you know, people, you know, for example, like, you know, platforms like this one that's being held, you know, just like helping people become more aware of, you know, the fact that, you know, verify the information. I mean, this is even in Islamic tradition, verify the information before you pass it on. So, you know, just trying to get people, you know, starting to look at situations like to, you know, it has to come from the ground level where people need to start to realize that you can't just jump on information that you haven't verified yourself. Just creating that culture among people, you know, you start small and then spread it around, creating that culture that, you know, you get information, first check it with another source, check it, like obviously we have to do that as journalists, but you know, sharing that type of that attitude with other people, you know, it's a slow process, it's a long process, and it's hard, you know, it's really hard, especially when there are situations that can create a lot of emotion. You know, that's going to be people's, you know, first instinct. And, you know, unfortunately, we can't always control how other people react to situations, but like I said, we can start to create that conversation, start to create that situation where, like, listen, it's not always true, or look at that last time when people got really upset, like, you know, point to, like, create like news that shows that, look, these were times when things, you know, weren't as people imagined, and it had a bad consequence. So, you know, training people to then, for the next time, know how to process information first. Like, you know, it's more of like a mentality thing that you kind of have to reach out and get people to start picking up on. I don't know if that was very helpful, but it's hard. I know what you mean. Like, you know, you said you're in Egypt. I know that, like, there's a lot of news that goes out and then people just get upset right away. And then it's too late once people have gotten upset and things have gone wrong.
Yes,
but,
and when we see that people are still sharing the click and win messages, you can imagine how can it go in a political level.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. So, you know, again, like just trying to get, you know, people to understand that, you know, just to wait a minute and verify what's happening, or, you know, just again, like I mentioned earlier, counter misinformation with information as quickly as it goes out. Try to, you know, counter it with what you know, and then at least people will see like differing opinions or differing angles, and that might make them stop a bit and think.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, Ms. Sarah, I have a written question from Mariam Abdulrazak from Oman. She asked how to practice journalism as a freelancer with zero experience and knowledge of what journalism is.
Okay. Well, so first of all, you know, your interest is there. That's an amazing first step. So if you have no journalistic experience and you're a freelancer, you're kind of on your own, a good way is to, you know, maybe reach out to someone you know who might have already worked as a journalist, or first start reading articles, reading stories, watching clips of things that you're interested in covering, and then finding who covered that, who did that story, who you know, was able to do that. Then maybe trying to reach out to people. Like that's another thing, like with this online, being stuck online, basically it kind of equalizes the field where like everybody's online and everybody's available online. So, you know, people can be accessed through LinkedIn, through Twitter, through Facebook, all these mediums. So it's, you know, trying to reach out to people who may have some experience, you know, maybe taking some classes that sometimes universities, they'll do classes that are not necessarily only for their own students. You know, there might be stuff that's open to the public, you know, reaching out to those, and like, you know, like this forum, this is a good way to get started. But as I mentioned before, is making as many connections as possible. I can't emphasize how important that is. Like, you know, you should eventually have a huge stack of business cards and numbers and, you know, emails, so that, you know, even if you don't get, you know, your information from one place, that can lead to another place. And, you know, it's good to always connect with somebody who has been there, and then that way you can, like, kind of be mentored by them, or they can point you in the right direction, or in the least, if you can't even get in touch with them, read what they write, and then that'll give you tips on how to write or how to cover a story, how to do look at an angle of a story. So yeah, just doing as much research as you can and trying to connect with people as much as you can will help.
Okay, Ms. Sarah, we'll take the last question from Karim Abdulrassaq from Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
Karim, you can go with your question. My guess he has a connection issue. Karim, can you hear us? Okay, we lost her. So, Ms. Sarah, thank you once again for devoting your time today to join the session and our program. Do you have any final word or advice to our participants before we close the session?
Well, as I mentioned, the first step is showing interest, and you all have shown that. And it makes me very happy to see young people who are very interested in journalism, who are interested in in this field, because it's very important to have young people, to have more people, and to have different people, fresh blood, and people coming into this field. I just want to remind people to keep in mind, like, what is the main reason that you join this field. Like, there's Hollywood out there that's always glamorizing journalism, which, yes, it can be exciting, it can be adventurous, and it can be, all of that. But it can also be very grueling, and it can be very difficult. And a lot of times you might spend a whole lot of time on a story, and then it reaches to a dead end. So my advice is to not give up. There's a lot of things that can put you down in this field, and then either from people, from just covering a story that's difficult. Like, just don't give up, keep pushing, and always remind yourself what was the reason why you came into journalism in the first place. And then look at all the people out there. Again, I'm not saying put yourself into dangerous situations, but people who have died covering stories, people who have been imprisoned covering stories, and look at them and just see that they went to these lengths for a specific reason, and you have to remind yourself of that important reason and keep using that to push forward. And then reach out to people, reach out to each other. Don't do it alone. I mean, like, mentally, psychologically, there's so much that's out there that's draining. Especially the news itself is usually bad. So take care of yourself and don't give up and keep pushing forward.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Sarah. On behalf of ICYF and all the participants, I have been reading all the comments. They are telling you thank you, and I guess that you can see their comments. So on behalf of ICYF and our participants, thank you for joining us. Our participants, we will close the session right now, but please don't go away and don't go out from the link, because you will be in a break until 2:30. Until the second session will start, and my colleague Anas will be with you. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much.